or the future construction of those bases?
However, even without factoring the damage to the bases, a new report by the Washington-based think tank CSIS has noted other losses worth billions. CSIS says that the U.S. has lost military equipment worth $2.3 to $2.8 billion. The estimate was for aircraft losses and the loss of radars for THAAD missile systems. The CSIS did not calculate losses stemming from the damage to the bases themselves, nor to the specialized weapons therein. Then there are other costs that are stemming out from this war, which are being borne by ordinary Americans. Inflation caused by fuel supply disruptions and the resultant surge in oil prices is already hurting American citizens. Amid these political clashes in Washington, Tehran has now decided to pour fuel on these flames. Iran's Foreign Minister Sayyid Abbas Araghchi put out this social media post that you see. He claimed that the war has already cost the US $100 billion so far, which is 4 times the figure announced by the Pentagon. Araghchi also claimed that each American household was paying an additional $500 per month because of the war. Iran is highlighting the plight of ordinary families, which seems to be a bid to get the US to end the war quickly and on favorable terms for Tehran. And the war ending will help Iran avoid an economic disaster as well. Remember, reports say that Iran is expected to face a double-digit contraction of its GDP this year because of this conflict. Shipping data shows that only 300,000 barrels of Iranian oil flowed out per day between the 13th and the 25th of April. This is against over 1 million barrels being loaded onto tankers during that particular period. The slowing down of exports means that Iran's oil storage capacity is filling up rapidly, and that may force Iran to shut its oil production in the coming weeks. Reports also say that unemployment is already rising in Iran due to the war, and uncertainty has dented consumer spending. Now, all of these factors together may cause an economic calamity in Iran in the long term. However, the country has reportedly made preparations before the war began. The government says that it stockpiled 6 months of essential imports, and it has been rolling out various economic support initiatives over the course of the war. Experts say that Iran can withstand economic pressure for about 6 months. So the question now is, who will blink first? Would it be Tehran or Washington? All right, let me welcome my guests on the broadcast, Colonel David B. Des Rosacea. He's a professor at the Thayer Marshall Institute and a former Deputy Director for Peacekeeping in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. He's joining me live at the moment. Colonel David, good evening. Welcome to WION. 3 sides, Colonel David, giving 3 different figures as far as the economic cost of this war is concerned. There's the Trump administration, the Pentagon, which has given a $25 billion figure. Then there is the Democrats who say that amount is double. Then you've got Iran coming into this entire exchange saying it's none of that, it's 4 times the cost. Who should we believe?
Well, I wouldn't believe Iran. There honestly is, this is a definitional issue, and there's an issue that concerns depreciation. So I think all people are right. What you have to do is look at the definitions that they use. I think the Pentagon's official estimate just refers to the cost of munitions expended, and there may be some depreciation involved in that. I'm not sure if it includes the cost of, say, aircraft that were lost. And in those instances, you could make a good faith estimate. For example, a lot of the surveillance drones that are lost over Iran are due to be phased out in 2027. They'd be scrapped. A lot of the Tomahawk missiles are approaching the end of their service life and would become, they would have to be disassembled by the beginning of the next fiscal year. So there's a lot of different possible explanations here, but I think that the true answer is somewhere in between. Clearly, if you have an aircraft that is destroyed and it's at the end of its service life, that's not worth as much as a brand new aircraft, but you still have to have some sort of capability there. And honestly, what I would need to do would be to see the figures to figure it out. But I think it's probably somewhere between the Democrats' estimate and between the Pentagon's estimate is the true answer.
And so while this, this questioning continues, Colonel David, one of the biggest cause of concerns for the American citizens has been inflation, and there have been multiple reports emerging of how the cost of living is increasing, something that Donald Trump and his administration had promised to lower when they were campaigning. And so for Ro Khanna to ask the economic cost of war and inflation figures to Pete Hegseth probably is a valid question as far as American citizens are concerned. But the Trump administration seems to be focused more on the nuclear obliteration instead of what their own citizens are feeling within the country.
Yeah, I don't think the two are related. I think it's a bit of non sequitur thinking. I mean, the war is driving inflation in as much as it's increased the cost of fuel, and that cost of fuel is felt in every other aspect of the American economy. So that does feed inflation. That raises costs of groceries and clothing and anything else that Americans would want to buy. The cost of defense spending is not really much of a contributor. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money to normal people like you and me, but the U.S. economy is huge. And, this is less than we spend on films and pet food in a given year. So I think what Trump would say is that if there is a successful resolution to the war, then prices will go down. But if Iran is allowed to leave with its ability to threaten its neighbors and thus the global fuel supply intact, whenever they're unhappy with us, they'll have the ability to, again, spike the cost of fuel globally, which will affect us. So I think at least for a few more months, President Trump's view that this has to be won on our term will prevail. And people like Ro Khanna, who is very much a marginal figure, he's well outside the mainstream of Democratic Party politics, they'll remain screaming on the outside, but not many people will pay attention to them.
Absolutely understand when you say that, perhaps Ro Khanna doesn't matter so much to the Trump administration, but perhaps the questions that he raised were valid, and there are a lot of Americans who are asking this. But aside from that, Colonel David, a lot of critics of the Trump administration say that, look, perhaps Iran has been smart in tackling with this war even before it started. 6 months of stockpile being kept when you knew that something like this would occur, as opposed to the Trump administration, which perhaps was not ready for the Strait of Hormuz blockade from the Iranian side, the fuel crisis that the world will face, and the kind of horizontal escalation that came in from the Iranian side, and such a long retaliation that still continues from the Iranian side. Critics say that, look, Iran has been smarter in dealing with this and coping with this conflict.
Well, I think Iranian government officials have said that, but there's actually no evidence that Iran has a stockpile of strategic commodities or that it is releasing it, because the inflation rate in Iran for basic commodities is somewhat in the area of 70% annually, and it's increasing. The Iranian currency has hit its lowest level ever against any convertible currency. So just today. So if there are these stockpiles, they're still being stockpiled. They haven't been released into the market and the economic performance. But I do think you're right. I mean, Iran's decision to focus its military might on neutral civilian shipping, to include Indian shipping, has managed to disrupt the global economy to a significant degree. The question is whether the United States, its partners, and other people who are dependent on energy shipments from the Gulf, including India, and most importantly for Iran, including China, whether they'll allow that to continue. And I think chances are pretty good they will not. So it still remains to be seen, how this will come out. But I think the idea of Iran saying, oh, no, this doesn't affect us, their actions against the reciprocal blockade imposed by the United States and the anecdotal evidence we get, because again, reporters such as you are not free to report in Iran, but they indicate that the economy is suffering a much greater degree of damage. I mean, quite frankly, the economic price is an inconvenience for most Americans, but it is approaching an as existential challenge for many Iranians.
All right, let's see how this moves forward, Colonel David. As far as actions are concerned, most of the world thinks that the actions of both sides have disrupted the energy supply routes and the global economy. But I'll leave it there. Let's wait and watch whether this is resolved anytime soon or not. Thanks very much, Colonel David, for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll see when the United States attacks an Indian tanker. Let me know, and then perhaps we'll have a different conversation.
No, I'm not contesting that. I'm just saying both sides should understand that the actions of both sides are affecting the entire world.
Absolutely. That's the definition of a superpower.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much, Colonel David.
Thank you.
All right, with that, let's move on. Let's tell you how Bloomberg has reported that the U.S. Air Force is moving ahead with a defense purchase involving a company partly owned by the sons of U.S. President Donald Trump. As per this report, the Air Force plans to acquire interceptor drones from PowerUs, which is a Florida-based firm in which Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump hold ownership stakes. The system is designed to counter hostile drones by intercepting and destroying them mid-air, which is a capability increasingly in demand as low-cost aerial threats reshape modern warfare. This deal comes after a successful demonstration in Arizona where the company showcased its interceptor technology. Remember, this marks PowerUs's first known sale of such a system to the U.S. military, placing it among a growing list of firms entering the rapidly expanding counter-drone space. So far, key details remain limited. Neither the U.S. military nor PowerUs has disclosed the size, value, or volume of the contract. Bloomberg notes that this is typical in early-stage defense procurement, where the Pentagon often tests and evaluates systems before committing to large-scale purchases. These initial agreements are generally used to assess performance, cost efficiency, and scalability before any broader deployment. The move also aligns with a wider U.S. strategy to counter inexpensive drone threats, particularly those seen in conflicts involving Iran and Ukraine, with similarly low-cost interception systems instead of expensive missile defenses. However, the development has sparked criticism. Ethics experts argue that awarding defense contracts to firms that are linked to the president's family could create perceived conflicts of interest, even if standard procurement processes are followed. As demand for counter-drone systems surges globally, this deal highlights both the strategic urgency and the political scrutiny shaping the future of modern defense technology. And beyond defense, the Trump family has expanded into critical minerals, a sector that is central to global supply chains and national security. Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump have taken stakes in a U.S.-backed tungsten mining project in Kazakhstan, which has been supported by up to $1.6 billion from U.S. government-linked agencies. Tungsten, which is a key material used in missiles, armor-piercing ammunition, and industrial tools, has now become a strategic priority amid rising competition with China. While there is no evidence of direct involvement in securing government backing, the overlap between business interests and policy priorities continues to draw scrutiny. And our correspondent Susan Tehrani is joining us live from New York to get us an understanding of this. Susan, good evening. Get us the latest as far as the Trump family getting, being accused in this entire conflict of interest controversy is concerned. This is not the first time, but any response of how they plan to take things forward?
Right. So two fronts here and two different opinions. While they're not breaking any law, some believe that the optics presented in this story is not beneficial for the Trump family and the president. Others believe that it's a smart business decision and it doesn't really matter who's involved, considering the fact that the United States will be able to domestically produce these low-cost drones with less reliance on China. But it does seem that the two brothers are involved in a company that is sort of a merger to a golf course company that they're involved in. So automatically they become involved in this new drone company. And they sit on the board, they are investors, and this has created sort of not so much a controversy, but again, a discussion about to what extent a family member of a sitting president can be involved in the Pentagon. The argument there is that, these should be deals and bets that will be publicly offered and not immediately given to one company to create competition. But it appears that this company has been very convincing in being able to really produce thousands of these drones, being very low cost for the Pentagon. And that was the part that was very attractive, not only to the Trump administration, but the Pentagon as well. Because at this point, with warfare happening in the Middle East, and we saw how Iran is using these cheap drones, the United States felt that it was very important to counter that.
All right, Susan, thanks very much for giving us a perspective of what exactly this controversy is about and, of course, how the Trump administration has been taking it forward. Thanks very much. The Election Commission of India has now announced repolling at 15 booths in 2 constituencies of West Bengal following complaints of irregularities. Repolling will be held on the 2nd of May at 11 booths in the Magrahat West Assembly constituency of South 24 Parganas and 4 booths in the Diamond Harbour Assembly constituency. Now, according to the order that has been issued by the poll panel, voting will be held from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. Meanwhile, security arrangements are in place at the strong rooms located at Khudiram Anushilan Kendra in Kolkata ahead of the counting of votes on the 4th of May. Remember, this is the same venue where Trinamool Congress leaders staged a sit-in protest on Thursday and alleged that EVMs were being tampered with. West Bengal's leader of opposition, Shubhendu Adhikari, meanwhile, has called a party meeting to discuss vote counting with the Bharatiya Janata Party workers and leaders in Bhawanipur, from where TMC chief Mamata Banerjee is contesting. With that, let's shift our focus now to the state of Punjab. A special session in the Punjab Assembly spiraled into a controversy today, with opposition leaders hurling allegations about Aam Aadmi Party leader and Chief Minister Bhagwant Man's state. Dramatic scenes unfolded earlier in the day, with leaders from the Congress and Shiromani Akali Dal accusing Bhagwant Mann of attending the Assembly session in an inebriated state. The allegations did not stop there. Opposition lawmakers demanded an alcohol test for Bhagwant Mann. In fact, the leader of opposition, Pratap Singh Bajwa, filed a plea with the speaker demanding an alcometer and dope testing of the chief minister and all of the assembly leaders.
What should we even do coming to the assembly where the chief minister is in an inebriated state? What is the purpose of holding a session when the head of the state is completely sozzled? We demand that everyone's test be conducted.
Amid the escalating row, Aam Aadmi Party leaders continued to call for decorum in the assembly, asking leaders to focus on the agenda of this special session to honour workers on Labour Day. Bhagwant Mann did not retort to the accusation in the assembly, but he slammed the opposition after coming out of the session.
All speculations have been put to rest today regarding all those who were saying that 65 or 40 MLAs of AAP are going away. The Congress have no issues to raise. What test should be done?
The session was also a motion of confidence for Bhagwant Mann before it spiraled into this controversy. Eventually, after the walkout by Congress leaders, Aam Aadmi Party MLAs passed a unanimous motion to express confidence in the Chief Minister. The motion, remember, comes just days after 6 Rajya Sabha MPs from Punjab switched over to the Bharatiya Janata Party. The big names included AAP leaders, former AAP leader in fact, Raghav Chadda, Ashok Mittal and Swati Maliwal.
आप में से कई लोग पिछले कुछ सालों से मुझे ये कह भी रहे थे और मैं पर्सनली पिछले कुछ
All right, shifting our focus to Israel now, where elections will take place later this year, by late October perhaps. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, will be looking to extend his tenure as the country's longest-serving Prime Minister. But a new opinion poll now shows that he is trailing behind two of his staunch rivals. The new poll says that the Israeli public considers two candidates more suitable for the Prime Minister's post than Netanyahu. They are former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and the former IDF chief Gadi Eisenkot. The Israeli opposition parties have been making moves to ensure Netanyahu's downfall in this year's election. Two major parties, Naftali Bennett's Bennett 2026 and former MP Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid, announced a merger last Sunday. They have now formed the Together party to take on Netanyahu's Likud party. Naftali Bennett will be the prime ministerial candidate for this Together party, and the new poll shows that 46% of Israel considers him suitable for the premiership. After Bennett, the people surveyed found Eisenkot as the next most suitable candidate. 44% of the people polled said the former IDF chief was suitable to be the PM, and after that, there was Netanyahu at 41%. Now, this comes amid Netanyahu's ongoing corruption trials and the constant wars that Israel has been fighting since the 7th of October 2023. But despite their lead in suitability scores, it will not be easy for the Israeli opposition to topple Prime Minister Netanyahu. Remember, Israel follows a proportional representation system of elections. Parties need to secure 3.5% of the vote to get seats in the Israeli parliament or the Knesset. This leads to coalition governments, which often collapse before their tenure ends. Netanyahu was last toppled in June 2021, but he reclaimed the top job about a year and a half later. It was a coalition between Bennett and Lapid, which had defeated Netanyahu back in 2021 as well. But that coalition had collapsed the following year, paving the way for Bibi's return. Bennett and Lapid have now invited Eisenkot to join their anti-Netanyahu faction. The new poll shows that 34% of the public thinks Eisenkot should accept the offer. But if he does, he would have to play the second fiddle to Naftali Bennett, and he may have to forsake his own prime ministerial ambitions. Will he join hands with the opposition to further dent Netanyahu's chances? Or will the opposition parties fail to form a united front, given Israel's longest-serving prime minister a better chance to extend his record? That's the big question. Moving on, the FIFA Congress became quite the spectacle on Thursday as Gianni Infantino's attempt to force a handshake between representatives of the Israel Football Association and the Palestine Football Federation massively backfired. It was quite an awkward moment, in fact, for Infantino, who opened the annual Congress by saying football can unite the world. He then called the president of the Palestinian Football Federation, Jibril Rajoub, and then the Israel Vice President, Football Federation, Basim Sheikh Suleiman, but Rajoub refused to stand next to Suleiman. When Infantino attempted to bring them closer together for a handshake and a photo opportunity, Rajoub stood his ground when Infantino placed a hand on his shoulder and encouraged him to reach out a hand. When Rajoub refused to stand with his counterpart, he shouted, "We are suffering," to the crowd. Infantino then quickly approached Rajoub in a move to defuse the situation and spoke into his ear before they shook hands, and he left the stage.
We will work together, President Rajoub, Vice President Suleiman. Let's work together. Let's work together to give hope to the children. Let's work together for that. We have a beautiful under-15 tournament coming up where we will invite all 211 countries to participate, all the children of the world. Let's do it for that. Please, we work together. You have my commitment. You have the support of the whole room.
All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Race to Power. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
No SUV is too big here. No adventure motorcycle